All right. Hello, everyone. This is Kevin Platt with Reader's Nook Magazine, and I have with me Natalie, or as she goes by her pen name, NP Conti, and she's joining me all the way from down under in Melbourne,
Hi.
Australia. Um, I wanted to get together with her and just kind of learn more about her and about who she is as an author and who she is as a person. And welcome. I'm glad that you could join us.
I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you. Thank you. So I just wanted to start off. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, about you, your interests, your family, about you. Not necessarily as an author, but about you.
Sure. Sure. So my name's Natalie. My family immigrated to Australia from the south of Italy, but I was born here. So I live in Melbourne with my husband, my two children, and my two dogs. And we love to travel. We love anything that has a cabin and an open fireplace. So we're happy with that. And I love to cook. I love to cook a lot of the traditional cuisines, like anything passed down from my family or passed down from my husband's family because they immigrated from Greece. So there's a little bit of, we can relate in that way. I obviously love to read, and I love nature and animals, and I love to snowboard as well. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Yeah, I think I've seen that on your Instagram page that you went snowboarding and that you love to do that. How old are your
Yeah.
kids?
So Aston is 8 and Scarlett is 7.
Oh, cool. Oh, they're really close.
Yeah, they're really close in age. Yeah, it was pretty
Yeah.
fun for a couple of
Wow,
years
that's
there.
great. That's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
That's great. And
Yeah.
so right now we kind of talked a little bit about this before starting, but it's a lot of people that at least on my Instagram and the people that have read the magazine are in
Yep.
the U.S.
Yeah.
So for us it's summer, and for
Yeah.
you it's the
It's
opposite,
winter.
right?
It
Yeah.
is the opposite, yes. I was actually quite worried today about the light. I was like, oh, this window should be fine, but I realized how dark it was today and I had to turn on all of these lights. So it was really like, but there's a really cold blast happening in Melbourne right now. We get the winds from Antarctica, so from where we are geographically. So yeah, it can be pretty cold.
I bet. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go back for a minute. So your parents are from Italy
Yeah.
then?
Yes, yeah. My parents are from the south of Italy. My mum is from a place called Puglia, and that is from the heel of the boot, I suppose. And my dad is from Sicily, so the soccer ball, I suppose. Yeah, so, but they immigrated
Oh,
here and met here, so
okay.
yeah, yeah.
And you said your husband is from
My husband's family is from Greece, but he was born here like
Greece.
I was.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to go to Greece.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's
Me and my
stunning.
wife watch like Mamma Mia and shows like that, and it shows Greece,
Yeah.
and we're like, oh, I want to go. I want to visit.
Yeah.
So that would be
The water really is
fantastic.
that blue. It's really
Is it
amazing.
really?
It
So
really
you
is that blue.
so you've
We,
been.
we've been, yeah. My husband took me a couple of years ago before the children were born, and we were just, we were traveling where his parents were from, the village where they were from, and it was just really amazing to see. Uh, they've got amazing stories from traveling here from post-war times, and it's just really interesting, full of rich history. And honestly, 3 weeks wasn't enough. You've just it was just, yeah, had to stay longer. Yeah, so we can't wait to return.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
That's great.
Hmm.
All right. So tell me a little bit about how long you've been writing, how long you've been
Hmm.
an author.
Yep.
I know what you've been working on.
Yeah.
Luckily,
Yeah, you
um,
do. That's great.
yeah, And but a lot of our listeners and those who are going to be watching this don't maybe not they maybe don't know. So just, how long have you been writing? What made you start writing and
Yeah.
want to be an author? And just kind of go over that for a little bit.
Sure, sure. Well, I wrote my first short story series when I was 7. And
Wow.
it was about these girls that they were all friends and they'd go to sleep and then they'd wake up, and when they woke up they were in this magical land. So I basically had the plot for Inception many years earlier. Could have been a millionaire,
Nice.
but anyway. No, but basically, as I went into my teens, I actually wrote a lot of poetry at that time. I really wanted to write songs, and that's really how it started. So I wanted to write music. I love music even today, and it really just carried on until I felt like I had enough of a storyline where I was like, I feel like I want to put this down on paper, and I just, was not really taking it very seriously. I was actually a closet writer. I never really talked about it very much. And, I think about 8 years ago when I started writing the novel that I'm writing now, I feel that when I started writing that, even then, I didn't say, oh, I'm gonna publish this. I'm gonna be an author. I was really just writing it for me. But then as I went along and other people, like friends, started reading it, they really encouraged me and helped me see and helped me have the confidence, I suppose, to see that other people will want to read this. And so here I am now today. So I feel like I've been an author. I've got some previously published smaller works, but I've been an author for about, let's say, 8 years, 6 to 8 years. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great.
So, yeah.
So are you going to keep writing poetry? Or are you going to move more towards what you're doing now, novels, or what are your
Definitely
plans
novels.
with that?
Yeah, look, definitely novels. Novels have stolen my heart. I feel like I need to get, in terms of the character arc, to see the whole, progression of a character. I feel like we can only do that in that condensed scope of a novel. But I think that poetry will always still have my heart a little bit there. I feel like I use it for my own personal, to kind of offload feelings, or sometimes I get a bit of a character involved there too, and I make it about that. So I feel like it'll never truly trickle off in that way, but novels definitely have my heart now, so I'm definitely continuing with that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great. And tell us what it is that you're working on right now. Again, I'm a little bit familiar with it, but
Yes.
let everybody know kind of what you're working on and where you're at with that.
Mm. Sure, sure. Well, so the Anima Corps is a paranormal fantasy, and it's about a secret race of supernatural beings that have special abilities, special powers, and they can semi-shapeshift. And it's all surrounding this military cause that they work at, and it follows the story of Hellfire. And Hellfire is a wolf anima, and she has this really bad reputation for being an arch murderer. And basically, when humans start being possessed by demons and anima alike, and they start to threaten the world that we know, this special task force, this operational task force, is formed for the protection of Earth. And she's really having a hard time with it and has to learn to work with the team and also with the new captain, Ryder Everett, who is also a wolf anima and one of the last ones left. And so it's really about her struggles. It's about their missions, but it's about her struggle. It's about her struggle with the military cause that betrayed her. So yeah, so I think it's definitely got a Shadowhunters meets X-Men sort of vibe.
Yes, I think that explains it great.
Yeah, it does. Hey.
Yeah. Just so everyone knows, I was fortunate enough to get my hands on a copy of the Anima Corps, and and it was great. I mean,
Ah,
it seemed like it took me forever to get through it, but that's because I got through it and then forgot to tell you that I got through it. I mean, I read it in maybe 3 weeks, and that
oh,
was,
amazing. That's pretty good.
I mean, it was awesome. So,
Oh, I'm
so
so
thank you
glad.
for letting me be a part of that.
Oh,
And
it was a pleasure. You've got so much extensive knowledge, and I think it just made sense as well.
oh,
Yeah.
thank you,
So thank you for
thank
being a
you.
part of it.
Yeah, I was happy to.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what your inspiration for that novel was. How did you
Yeah.
come about with that?
Well, it started because I wanted to write a story about two people. I wanted to write a short story. It started off as a short story about two people that were just trying to cope with being demon slayers. That's how it started, basically. Those two characters, I had the idea for them. But I think Hellfire really came up for me as a character when a few years earlier, when I learned about Yellowstone, the Yellowstone wolves. So in 1926, the last Yellowstone pack of wolves were murdered. And even though this happened so much, like so before I was born and in another country, I felt so moved by it, so saddened by it, by that story, um, that I just thought to myself, what if these characters were something else entirely? What if these characters were wolves at a soul level, and that's why the pain was so much for this war on wolves? And I kind of followed that, and you know, that they weren't entirely human, but not necessarily werewolves, not necessarily what we know as these, the shape-shifting types, but their own race. And so that's how it pretty much snowballed from there.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Awesome.
that's where it came from.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I know that for a little while now you've been in the editing stage,
Yeah.
and I think I saw that you're pretty much done with that.
Yeah, pretty much. And it looks a little bit different since the last time you read it. So I think you'll I think you'll find that you'll be a bit surprised in some parts. But yes, in about 2 weeks, uh, we'll be starting copy edits. So it'll go back to my editor, and yeah, it'll be starting copy edits, which is right at the end of the process, which is really good. So um, my little team that I've created, we are looking at a Valentine's Day 2025 release. So hopefully, we've got kind of a pre-order happening by mid-December. Yeah,
Awesome.
it's really exciting.
Wonderful. That is very
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
It's lovely to be able to share it. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, this is the first time I'll be sharing like that information, so that's really good.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, it's like
Fantastic.
reveal.
You're the first to know. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. So, and this is it going to be a trilogy, or how many books are going to be in this series?
So definitely four.
Okay,
Definitely four books.
four
I
books.
always imagined that there would be seven, but I just
Okay.
haven't been able to grasp that far down the track, that far down where their character arcs are going. But yeah, I definitely four. So that's pretty much all I can say right now about that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We don't want to give too much away. Yeah, you
Yeah,
bet.
that's it. To be continued. Yeah.
Awesome. 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 And tell me a little bit. I've seen a little bit, on your Instagram and
Yep.
just, kind of following you, kind of your writing process
Yep.
and what you do to sit down and just get in that writing mode.
Yeah.
And I thought it was awesome the way you do it. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so I think the most important thing for me is to set up my space. I love to light a candle. I feel that it really brings me into the present moment. It's like, okay, I'm here. Light the candle. I love to make a cup of tea, and I love to just set the intention that I'm here to write for the love of it. I'm here only because I love writing and not because I feel, overwhelmed or there's a deadline or all of that kind of thing. So I really kind of sit down and I'm like, I'm here because I love it. And I think the biggest thing for me is, I think, having young children as well, is that the communication with my husband has to be really clear. So I feel like that's really key. I talk to him and I set up my schedule at the start of the week. And look, it can vary. I mean, I can be working during the day, I can be working really late at night, or sometimes I'm doing early mornings. So it really changes week by week, depending on what we have on. But what I do find is that when I'm given all day to write, I'm less productive than when I have like, okay, I've got 2 1.5-hour blocks to write. I don't know what it is, but if I've got all day, I will procrastinate. I'll get the same amount done, or probably less than if I really block out my time. So I make sure that that's in my mind space, in my head space. I typically write at my desk. Other than that, I might write, if my husband's working as well, I might write with him at the dining table. Sometimes I write on the couch. That's not really good. It's not good for posture. Don't recommend it. But in terms of like a daily writing goal, look, I'm somebody that I can get a little bit overwhelmed with that. So I set a really low, I feel, compared to other people, if I'm making the comparison, other people, I'm like, mine is 700 words. I've got like, I'm looking on Instagram, I'm like, 2,500 words. How did you get that? How did you, I'm just like, rah. But most of the time I do surpass that. I think that's more there for the days that I really struggle. And hopefully there's not, too many of those. So yeah, that's pretty much my process.
Perfect. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean as far as if I get 800 words, I'm happy.
Yeah. Sometimes that is really what you can, I mean, that's almost a whole scene or half a scene. That's good. That's really good. And if it's, if it feels good, I think that's where you've got to leave it at. I think that when you start pushing it and start stressing over it, that's when it affects the work. That's just me though.
I totally agree. I really like what you said about you're doing this because you want to write, because you love to write, not because I think sometimes we get caught up as authors. We get caught up with, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to get 2,000 words. And if I don't do that, then I feel bad. And maybe the next day I'm like, oh, I didn't reach my goal, so I'm just not going to write today. And I'll just do more the next day. That's happened to me. I don't know how many times that's happened to me. Look,
same. And that's why I had to change my outlook on it, because that was me as well. And I'd get to that next, like you said, I'd get to that next day and it's like, I'm behind now. That's not a good feeling. And I just think that if I write 700 words, even if I write 300 words, if they are a good 300 words, then I'm celebrating. I'm happy. Whereas, I think we can really get stuck with, and look, a manuscript, it's a marathon. It's such a long stretch of work, hours and hours and hours. And I think that if we just chip away at it, keep trucking, that's all we can ask for, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I know, you get online and you read all of the advice, be consistent, write, however many words a day or whatever. But to me, consistency is, okay, I'm going to sit down, and if I get to 200 words today,
Yeah,
and just like you said, if they're quality and you feel good about it, you did what you were supposed to. You're
absolutely.
consistently writing, and there's been a couple of other authors that have told me I sit down and I write on, Monday through Friday, and I take Saturday and Sunday off because
Yeah,
I have to let my mind reset and I have to have
yeah,
that break. And to me, that makes sense because
yeah.
you have to do that once in a while. It's like a job almost, where hey,
Mm,
you have to give yourself that little break. But as long as you're
yeah.
consistent, and I think I've mentioned this on my Instagram a few times
I
and
think you
other
have,
places,
yeah,
that just be consistent and keep
yeah,
going, and don't stop for long periods of time. As long as you do
yeah.
that, you're in that marathon like you mentioned, and you're able to
Mm,
finish and get your book written. And the main thing, and maybe you can speak to this since you are closer to the end than I am at this
ah,
point in my first novel, but um, I think that if you're consistent and you keep going and you
mm,
keep that flow going, and you don't
yeah,
stop, don't
yeah,
stop for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 1 month, 2 months at a time,
yeah.
then you'll finish. You'll get that first draft down, which is
That's
the
right.
point that I was getting to. Get that first draft,
Yeah,
get that written, and then you can go back and you can fine tune it, which is where you're at right now.
yeah, yeah.
But just
I
get
have to
that
admit,
written.
I have to admit, I love the first draft phase more than I love editing phase. But you know, but you're right. It's that consistency, and yeah, don't not taking those really long breaks, because I think that once you start taking really long breaks, I feel that, well, for me, I feel that it breaks my creative streak. It just it chops it up, and then I find it hard to get back on there. Um, but and I think sometimes we do confuse the consistency with the amount of words that we're writing. But and obviously she's not an author, but I actually go back to Taylor Swift here. Taylor Swift, the millennial god. She, I was watching something on Netflix about her and when she wrote the Folklore album, and it resonated with me as a writer as well. She didn't know she was writing this album. She just went to this cabin and she was like, I'm just going to play. I'm just going to play. I'm just going to show up. And every day she just showed up. And eventually, very quickly, she had an album. And I think that I just wanted to bring that type of mindset, that level of play into that first draft of, it's okay. Like, things are allowed to change. I have a plot, but I mean, the characters have they've got their own agenda. They go off on their own tangents. Sometimes I'm in the middle of a scene, I'm like, that's not meant to happen. And it's like this argument. Like, we all start talking and it's like, that's not meant to happen. But it's like, clearly that's what's meant to happen because it just came out on the page. And so I think we've just got to allow that. You just show up for half an hour, show up for that hour or whatever it is, and then just have that break and then go, okay, I'm going to come back again, and just short little snippets. That really helps me as someone that kind of gets really easily overwhelmed with, you've got to finish, you've got to you've got this deadline, you want to finish by this time, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I
Mm,
love that.
yeah.
Great. So once you are, you mentioned December or February
Mm,
release goal.
yep.
Will you be querying? Will you be doing the self-publishing route? What are your
Mm,
thoughts with that process?
mm. So different today, aren't they? Like, publishing today and publishing 20 years ago, it's changed so much. Um, at this stage, I will be self-publishing the Anima Corps. That's not to say that I won't go down that path later. But for now, I believe that I would like the creative freedom that being an indie author gives and allows at this time. I feel that I'm quite protective over my story at this stage. So I feel like I know how it needs to be written at the moment. And so I feel like I wanted to curate my team. And that really felt very intuitive to me. And it felt right. But that's just at this stage. I mean, that can change. Because I think that, and I think another main reason that I did choose this route was that traditional publishing can take 2 to 3 years, as you know, to get to the readers. So by the time you have a literary agent, then the literary agent has to sell it to the publisher, and then they have to get their editors onto it, and all of that whole process. It can take 2 to 3 years, and I just didn't want to wait that long. I wanted to talk to my readers now. I wanted to connect now, and it felt right for me.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That is great. And I don't know if there's really not a right or wrong as far as
No.
if you want to go traditionally published or indie
Agreed.
author. I think, like you said, it felt right for me. And
Yeah.
I think that's been one of the debates for the last, 10 years at least.
Mm-hmm.
Is it worth staying an indie author? Is it worth self-publishing? Or should I try and get traditionally published? And I think it's what you want to do. I really like what you said about having control over your work, being able to release it when you want. That resonates with me because I like that aspect as well. Being able to just, do what I want with my stories. Whereas when you give it to a publisher, they kind of take all of that away.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do as much as far as marketing. You don't have to do as much as with editing, things like that. But it's kind of a trade-off, and it's just what you feel is right for you.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
I really
And look,
like that.
a lot of American publishers at the moment, I've heard, are actually looking at indie authors at the moment, because they'll be like, okay, well, this is working for you. So I think that it's not even too late after you've published it for for a publisher, a traditional publisher, to come along and say, okay, well, that's working for you. This is really good. So we can take it from here. But the story's already written, and the readers already know what the story's about. So that kind of stays sacred to the author. You know what I'm saying? Like I really like that about it. That there are so many people now that, and we're seeing them on the shelves, like ones that were famous because of Book Talk. I think that's great. I think that's really great for those authors that were allowed to have that creative expression, that creative freedom. And then I think the publisher is more inclined to follow the storyline as it is. I mean, you can't really change it after that. You can't say, well, no, we want this character to be more like this, or they can't do that. So I think that it just becomes a bit more sacred, and I liked that.
Yeah, I really like that explanation. That's great.
Mm.
So looking back with where you're at in the process now,
Yeah.
you know, the magazine, Reader's Nook, and, even though it's for all authors and it's for all, writers, I'm gearing it more towards those who are just starting out and those who are starting their author journey, their publishing journey.
Yeah.
Because I want it to be a resource where they can go and they can get good information, and they can get industry information. They can, hopefully there's some really good tips in it, and that's what the goal is.
There absolutely will be great tips in it, because you're the editor-in-chief and you have such a wealth of knowledge. So it is fantastic already. So.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. And so where you're at now,
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask, looking back, knowing what you know now, would
Mm.
you have done anything differently as far as writing the novel, with the editing, with any part of your author journey so far? Would you have done anything differently, knowing what you
Mm.
know now, if you had known it back then?
That's a really good question. I think something I do regret is not documenting the first couple of years that I started writing the Anima Corps,
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't taking it. I was like, this is never going to be published. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is just for me. Uh, I didn't have social media. I didn't take any photos of like, oh, I was writing on this Friday night, or I was, you know, I never really, or I didn't journal about it like I do now. Like I journal about my process now. Um, and I feel like I can't even look back on those years. So I can only look back on the years that I started, where my friends were like, you need to like get yourself a platform and, start this up. And that's where I remember from. I don't really I can't really recall all the things from 8 years ago when I started having, these bursts of creative energy come through and like the stories coming through. I don't remember it as much, which is a real shame. I feel that I really love to honor my process. And I feel like that was a shame that I didn't do that, but I didn't know. So, you know. And I think that the other thing, it's not even that I would change anything in the story as such. It's that my belief in my work. I didn't always believe in my work. And I think that that's so important as an author or as a writer to believe in your work and just know that what you're writing is really important and that people have to read it, that it has to go out to people. There is that saying, I'm not sure who said it, but, and I don't know if you've heard this as well, but like when people say, what's your favorite book? And then you go off to say your favorite book. And then it's like, what if that was never published? What if that writer believed this isn't any good? It's not going to go anywhere. Who do I think I am? Uh, you know, and all of those thoughts that creep in, that they do creep in. That imposter syndrome they call it. And I think that answering that, it's like if I think of Harry Potter that changed my childhood, if I think of, Twilight that changed my teen years, it would be a tragedy had they said, I'm not going to publish this. This is just for me. It's not any good. It's just gonna sit, in my filing cabinet and no one's going to read it. I wouldn't have been changed by those stories. So do we ever really know? Like, I don't think we even really know how it's going to affect others until we share it, until we have that ability, that belief in ourselves that we should share it. And so I think that art is really important in that way. So that's what I wish I knew a lot earlier.
That's great.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. That really hits home for me as well, because my favorite author of all time, I think I have every single one of his books, is Terry Brooks.
Oh,
And
I didn't know that about you. The
I
Shannara Chronicles?
love Terry Brooks. I think I read The Sword of Shannara when I was, or Shannara, I'm not even sure how to say
Yeah,
it. Anyway,
yeah, I don't know.
anyway, my
Tomato,
favorite
tomato,
author, but I
right?
don't know how to say anything in his books. Um, but I think I started reading that when I was 10. I mean,
Wow.
that's when I really, I think, fell in love with fantasy. And,
Yeah,
anyone who follows me on my author page or knows anything about me, that's like my thing. I love fantasy. I love
yeah.
dragons. I love all that stuff. And he was actually, I don't know if anybody knows this, but he was a lawyer for a long time before he was an author. And
Mm.
what if he would have just said, you know what? I'm making pretty good money as a lawyer, or
Mm.
I have this story, but I don't want to really
Yeah.
take the time to write it. And he wrote this when in 19, I think it came out in 1978.
Mm.
And
Been around a while.
yeah, and I mean, what if he would have just said, "Yeah, I'm just gonna stick to being a lawyer. I don't need to be an author."
Yeah.
And look at everything that's come about with him after he started writing that. So that I
Absolutely.
love that you said that because and my wife loves the Twilight series. I think that's
Ah,
the only series
me
that
and
I've ever
both.
seen her read. And what if I think Stephanie Meyer went to, I don't even know, 10 to 12 different publishers
She
before
did.
they finally said, "Yeah, we'll give you a
Yeah.
chance." And I bet the publishers that she went to before, uh, and I can't even remember who published her books now. It's just left my
I
mind.
can't either. They're up in my bookshelf, but I can't either.
Yeah, we've got them here somewhere too.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm sure all of the other publishers before that one are kicking themselves now and
Absolutely.
saying, "Why didn't we go with her?" But what if she
Absolutely.
would have just given up after sending it to five of them and said, "You know what? I
Yeah.
guess, like you said, I just wrote this for me."
Yeah.
But
Or like
I
I
mean,
take that
she,
as a sign. I take it as a sign. Five people said no. Like we are as authors, we get a lot of no's. It's just it just takes that one person to believe in it.
yep,
And I think that's why we got to back ourselves. We've got to believe in it ourselves.
yes, yep. You just read my
Mm-hmm.
mind, and that one person needs to be us. And of
Yeah.
course, you know, my wife is behind me all the way. I'm sure your husband is behind
Yeah.
you all the way on your writing journey, and so and they believe in us too. But yeah, it's got to start with you
Mm,
and saying, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going
yeah.
to be an author. So that's great.
Yeah. It's so
That
nice
is
to have that
wonderful.
support though, isn't it? From,
Yes,
yeah. Beautiful.
yes, it
Hmm.
is. So I think the last thing that I just wanted to go over a little bit is what advice do you have for those? Like I mentioned, I'm kind of gearing towards those who are just starting out on their journey and being an
Mm.
author. And do you have any advice for someone who is maybe they have this story in their mind, but they're not sure if they should write it down, or they had it way back when they were in junior high or high school, and now they're later in life, and they don't think that anyone's going to read this story that they've had in their head forever.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for someone who is just thinking about it or just starting out?
Well, I think going back to what I was saying before as well, and what we were speaking about before was to believe in yourself. I think that's that number one thing, isn't it? But I think another thing that I would say is that you don't need anybody's permission to do this. You don't need anybody's permission to, not necessarily just quit your job and start today, but like start putting down some hours in the week. If you're juggling another job, start putting down some hours in the week and go, that is my writing time. Carve it out and say, that is my sacred writing time. No one, it doesn't matter if somebody, invites me somewhere or, anything that comes on that day, that is your writing time, and really stick to it. And if you can't, and if that's really unavoidable, like shift it to somewhere else that is, non-negotiable. That's my writing time. But just, yeah, not needing permission. I think that, you know, I worked as an interior designer before I had children. And so it was all about like, do I go back there, you know, or do I allow myself to creatively explore this? And I think having children for me is what took me out of the 9 to 5 and allowed me to say, okay, well, I've got some time while, Aston sleeps. I can write something. How many times there's only so many times you can clean the house, you know what I mean? So it's like, or like, they go to bed really early and it's like, okay, instead of watching Netflix, I'm going to write. not there's anything wrong with Netflix, but I'm just saying, like, you can carve out that time. And I think another thing is stop caring about what other people think. Stop caring about what other people think. Like, I know that when I launch this book, there are people that are going to not like it, and there are going to be people that really love it. And I think we've got to just understand that we're just putting it out there to, it's like we got to just stop worrying about the people that won't like it and just start really connecting with the people that do, because they're your people. They're the people that are like you. Because I just feel like when I write my story, I'm writing my story because I need this story. This is the story I needed. And so someone else in the world is going to be like me, needing that story as well. And I just think that if we stop worrying about all the what everyone else thinks about how, oh, well, you should probably be doing something else other than writing. Well, that's not what my soul says. That's not what's good for my spirit, And I think that that's really important, to just kind of dismiss the societal thing of, oh, you're not going to be successful in that. There's only like 1% of people that'll be successful in that, blah, 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 blah. All those thoughts, all those things that can really easily cut you at the knees. And I just think that you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how this is going to affect people. And I think if your heart's in it, I just don't think that it can go wrong. I think also finding a accountability partner is a really good place to start as well, because then you can have those little meetings and say, I want to get to this scene, the end of this scene this week, or I want to do this many words, and that person go, hey, how are you going with that? And really have that accountability partner, and that support network, because I feel like writing can be very solitary. We can be really alone in it, so I think it's really nice to have that support. It's nice to, to have that community around us. And I think that the writing community, I know that maybe you would agree with me here, Kevin, but the writing community is a beautiful place to be. Everybody is so just lovely and kind and, really supportive. And like, we're here. So like, reach out,
Yeah,
I think that's,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. That's one thing that I've found is it's one of those industries where, other industries, everyone is trying to get ahead, and everyone is like, oh, you're my competition. You can't know what I'm doing. You can't, whatever that may be. Whereas with the writing community, and I tell my wife this all the time, and there's so much, I don't even know how to put it. They're behind you all the way. And there's no competition because you're not all trying to write the same story.
No.
Not one other person ever would have come up with the Anima Corps. Not one other person would have come up with Keepers of the Magic, which is what I'm working on.
With your
it's
project.
It's your story. Yeah. I mean, and it's wonderful because everyone just, like you said, they have your back and they're there. You reach out and you say, hey, I have this question, and everyone is so willing to help, and everyone is willing to just give you advice or like we have, read your book and give you feedback, and and there's just so many things that are so good with the writing community. And I really am been impressed. Yeah. It's been 5 years or so since I really got involved and started doing, writing and building a community, or building a platform, I should say. And it's just been great. I've been very impressed with everyone on there.
I love how we all want to cheer each other on. I'm so excited to see all of you every day, like, scrolling Instagram, and it's just like, it's great to see the same faces. It's like we're all friends, and it's really great. And like you said, that there's no, yeah, like in other industries, there's that competition, that they're kind of like, against each other in a way. It is not like that here. It's just so, it's like we're cut from the same cloth, like we all understand each other. We all go through the same things. It's really, I think it's a really important thing to have that. And yeah, I think it's really good. I think it's a positive thing. Yeah. So it's really good.
Definitely. Definitely.
And definitely, like, from all over the world as well. Like, look at us. Like, I'm 10 a.m. or probably 11 a.m. now,
Yeah.
Australia, and
I've kept you
you're
too long.
8:30. Like it's really good, and we've got some of the same friends. We're in some of the same circles, and it's just lovely to that person's cover reveal came out. I'm like dancing over here in Australia. I'm like, woohoo! Like, that's so great. Like, it's nice to have that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think of, everyone that I've met on there. There's, of course, Nick. Shout out to Nick Winters,
Yeah.
who lives in Scotland,
Amazing.
and Lanny lives
Yeah,
in
Lanny.
Canada. Of course, you in Australia, me in the U.S. There's
Yeah.
so many people that I've met that live all over the United States.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're just from all over, and it's amazing that we all kind of have that sense of community, even though we are so far spread out all over the world, like you said.
We should just have like a big convention or something at some point. Like,
Yeah.
just all come
Yeah.
down there, the Instagram writing community.
Yeah.
But what's really good about that I have learned over the years as well, with everybody being in different countries, is that, and something I personally love about this, is that if you've got a character that has to be from a certain country that you've never been to, you can just hit somebody up on the writing community and go, hey, what's it like living where you live? And, I'm writing about an American character. Can you help me, please? Like, with this. And I think that's a really good thing to have, because I don't know about you, but I didn't really stick to the rules with writing about what I knew. You know how they say, write what you know? I broke that rule, like, thousandfold broke that rule. Like, there is this much of what I know in my novel. Everything else is just like, okay, you're from here, this is what happens when, like, it's just like, why do I do this to myself? But it has to be that way. I feel like the characters chose it that way. And so sometimes, I think, with you, I think that was what happened with you reading the Anima Corps as well, was that I needed somebody that had, experienced Ryder Everett's, like, where he came from, and just kind of like, have I written this right? Have I done enough to, pass him off? And do it right, and do the research right. And then, like, eventually I want to go there. Eventually we all want to go, where our characters have been, and do that. But, sometimes when you're not able to do that, I think it's really good to have that. I've got some people that are like, can you help me write an Australian character? And I'm like, yeah, like, that's so easy. Like, tell me, hit me up, give me the questions. Because, I mean, what we know on TV and the stereotypes, I suppose, that we are used to is not what really happens. And sometimes we really want to dig into that person's backstory. We want to know properly what, we want to do it right. So.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that I've taken enough of your time. I appreciate it
no,
very, very, very much.
Thank you so much.
It's been great talking to you.
Oh, it's been an absolute honor, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me on Reader's Nook magazine. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. For everyone who's watching, go and follow Natalie, and be sure to follow her journey on Instagram or any other social media that she's on. I know her from Instagram. But if, Facebook, I don't know if you're on Facebook, but
Not
I'm
so
definitely
much.
gonna.
More Instagram and a little bit of TikTok. We'll
Yeah,
branch out as
yeah.
the time goes on, but I'd love to be, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to be friends with all of you. So yeah, absolutely. Come on over.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All
Lovely.
right.
Thank you
Well, I
so much. Well,
appreciate it again, and
you have a lovely night.
yeah, and you have a good day.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
See you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.